Good evening and welcome to the January 5th, 2011 meeting of the Municipality of Anchorage Platting Board. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Lendl Story.
Here.
Steve Abel.
Here.
Ken Fuller.
Here.
Ellen McKay.
Here.
Anastasia Taylor.
Here.
Jody Moses.
Here.
Daniel Young.
Present.
Brent Cole. Amy McKenzie.
We have a quorum, and so the next order of business, which actually is not on the agenda, is an interim election of vice chair because our vice chair, Mr. Krieger, is no longer serving on the board. So do I have any nominations? Jody. Oh, Ms. Moses. Go ahead, Fred.
I nominate Anastasia Taylor.
Are there any other nominations? Is there any objection? If not, then Ms. Taylor will be the vice chair. Next order of business is approval of action summaries. We have action summaries for Wednesday, October the 6th, Monday, November the 1st, Monday, November the 22nd, and December the 13th, Monday, December the 13th, all of 2010. May I have a motion for approval of the action summaries, please? Ms. Taylor and Mr. Abel seconds. Is there any objection to approval of the action summaries? Seeing none, the action summaries are approved, and we'll move on to the next order of business, which is the special order of business disclosures. Are there any disclosures? Mr. Young.
In the case of S11835-1 Lusac Manor, my firm is subcontracted to the petitioner's representative firm, our FR Bell & Associates, in the past. I have no financial or personal interest in the matters before the board. I can remain impartial in fact and action as a member of this board without personal bias. My past involvement and personal interests will not prevent me from fairly evaluating the facts of this case.
May I have a motion directing Mr. Young to participate, please? Ms. Taylor moves. Is there a second? Ms. Moses seconds. Would you speak to your motion, Ms. Taylor?
Based on what Mr. Young has said tonight, I don't see any evidence of a conflict of interest.
Any other discussion? Not yet. Any other discussion? Seeing none, then is there any objection? Seeing none, then Mr. Young, you are directed to participate in case S11835-1 Lusac Manor. Mr. Young.
In the case of S11838-1 Turnagain Subdivision, number 2, I participated in an environmental site investigation of Lot 5A approximately 20 years ago for the state of Alaska, and I just wanted to disclose that I have special knowledge about the property, environmental knowledge about the property. I have no financial or personal interest in the matters before the board. I can remain impartial in fact and action as a member of this board without personal bias, and my past involvement and personal interests will not prevent me from fairly evaluating the facts of this case.
May I have a motion directing Mr. Young to participate? Ms. Taylor moves. Is there a second? Mr. Fuller seconds the motion. Ms. Taylor, would you speak to your motion?
Based on the great deal of time that has passed and the lack of personal or financial interest, I support Mr. Young's participation in this case.
Any other discussion? Any objection? Then you are directed to participate in the Turnagain number 2 case. Any other disclosures? Ms. Taylor.
I have two disclosures tonight. My first one is on item FA on the agenda, Spruce Heights subdivision. In 2005 or 2006, while I worked in the private sector for PTS, I did some drainage work on a bill permit for this area. It was long enough ago, I'm not sure if the owners have changed, but I do not have any personal or private or financial interest in this property, and I believe I can be impartial.
I have a positive motion directing Ms. Taylor to participate in the Spruce Heights case. Mr. Young, is there a second? Mr. Fuller seconds. Mr. Young, would you speak to your motion?
Yes, I intend to support the motion. I do not see any potential conflict of interest or any reason that Ms. Taylor should be excluded from this hearing or participating on the board.
Any other discussion? Any objection to the motion? You're directed to participate, and you have another one?
On item C on the agenda, O'Malley Square subdivision, I am disclosing a prior disclosure. When this case came before us in 2009, I disclosed my involvement in, I believe it was 2005. When I worked for the municipality, I reviewed a project on this property, and I provided comments under project management and engineering. I had no personal or financial interest in the project then, and I continue to have no interest in this case. I believe I can be impartial.
Can I have a motion to direct Ms. Taylor to participate? Mr. Young, with a second by Mr. Fuller. Mr. Young, would you speak to your motion?
Yes, I intend to support the motion for the same reasons of the last case. I do not see any conflicts of interest or any bias, but I do understand that it's appropriate to disclose when we have special interests about a property, but that doesn't influence our decisions. So I will support this.
Any other discussion? Any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes, and Ms. Taylor, you are directed to participate in the O'Malley Square case. Okay, next order of business is an information item on the ordinance amending Title IV regarding boards and commissions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Erica McConnell. I'm a senior planner with the long-range planning section of the Planning Department. I'm also the project manager for the Title 21 rewrite project. Before you is an ordinance that amends Title IV of Anchorage Municipal Code and also deletes various sections of the Title 21 Code of Regulations. The intent of this ordinance is to standardize and collect together the various processes and procedures of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Platting Board, the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals, and the Urban Design Commission. Many of these were originally brought together in one of the chapters of the Title 21 rewrite, but we were directed by the Assembly Title 21 subcommittee to remove them from that chapter of Title 21 and consolidate them in Title IV. Title IV lays out all of the boards and commissions of the entire municipality. It lays out the standard procedures, things like attendance and vacancies for all of those boards. And so this adds to that and then also has a special section just for the land use boards. So we are bringing this ordinance to all four of the boards that it affects and just asking for if you have comments or questions or questions. And I'd be happy to take them tonight. If you think of things in the next couple weeks, I'd be also happy to take them by email.
Any questions for Ms. McConnell?
Thank you.
Next order of business is the consent agenda. There are no items this evening on the consent agenda, and there are no items on the old business, which brings us to the new business portion of the meeting, the public hearing portion of the meeting. And during the public hearing portion, we will abide by the procedures that are printed on the front of the agenda. After the staff presentation on an item, The chair will then ask for public testimony, open the public hearing. Persons who wish to testify, the petitioner will go first, and the petitioner and/or his representative will have, or her representative will have 10 minutes. Of that 10 minutes, time can be reserved for rebuttal. And then other persons wishing to speak, representatives of groups such as community councils, PTAs, have 5 minutes, and individuals have 3 minutes. We keep time by this little timer here up front, and the light is green during the testimony. It turns yellow when you have 1 minute left. It turns red at the end of the time. A buzzer sounds, and if you have not summed up by that time, you should quickly sum up your testimony. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action that we take, and the appeal procedure is, again, outlined on the front of the agenda. That being said, we'll go to the first case, which is S11829-1, Spruce Heights, Providence Edition subdivision. May we have staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This case is basically a reversion to acreage of 1 tract and 10 lots into 3 tracts for proposed Spruce Heights Providence Edition, tracts A, B-1, and C. The application also includes a request to vacate East 50th Avenue between Cordova and A Streets. The petition site contains 11.25 acres. This property is subject to 2 zoning districts. Proposed tract B1, which is occupied with a long-term hospital, is zoned RO Residential Office District. Proposed tracts A and C Block 7 are zoned I-1 Light Industrial District. They appear to be used for vehicle storage. East 48th adjoins the north petition site boundary, and it has been dedicated to a 60-foot width. The aerial photo, referring to the aerial photo on page 24 of the packet, which is in black and white, East 48th adjoins the north petition site boundary, as I said. There is a driveway access constructed to East 48th that serves the hospital. Now, East 48th is a Class 1C neighborhood collector on the official streets and highways plan. It does require a minimum 60-foot right-of-way width, and the existing dedication does meet the OS&HP standard. East 48th Avenue has not been constructed to municipal standards, but it appears that there is a sort of driveway that exists that provides vehicular access to that constructed driveway serving the hospital. Private development does require the petitioner to enter into a subdivision agreement for construction of East 48th Avenue to residential half-street standards. Cordova Street does abut the east petition site boundary. It's designated a Class 1 collector requiring a minimum 80-foot right-of-way width. 60 feet is provided. 40 feet from center line would be required of this preliminary plat. A 5-foot right-of-way dedication needs to be provided on the east property boundary, along with a 5-foot building setback along the east property boundary to meet the OS&HP standards. Now, there are 2 driveway access points to Cordova. One is in the northeast corner of the property. The other one, it has been constructed in East 50th Avenue, and that serves the hospital. Traffic engineering requires a joint access agreement for the driveway in East 50th Avenue to serve proposed tract B1 occupied by the hospital and proposed tract C. They mentioned in their comments that there would not be additional driveway permits allowed to Cordova Street because it is a collector street. The intent of the OSNHP is to minimize direct vehicular access from individual lots to collector streets. A Street adjoins the west property boundary. Now, the portion of A Street, there is a half dedication. It's got a half street dedication. This is functions as a local road. It is not designated on the official streets and highways plan, and it is not constructed at this point. A Street will provide both legal and physical access to proposed Tract A. Private development requires that the portion of A Street adjoining the proposed Tract A be improved with curb and gutter and a turnaround that meets fire regulations requirements. There is curb and gutter for the west side of A Street. This upgrade to A Street on the east side of the east half of the road will bring the road up to current municipal standards. The site is impacted by wetlands. They are type C wetlands. 50th Avenue is impacted by C wetlands, as well as the western half of proposed Tract B1. Now, drainage in this area, the surface water, it drains in a westerly, northwesterly direction. Storm drain facilities are located in the constructed portion of A Street north of East 48th Avenue. Watershed Management has stated that in their comments that these wetlands perform an important hydrologic function in absorbing surface runoff and treating it, and they noted that prior to any development on the east half of the west half of proposed Tract B, that the development be coordinated with Watershed Management Services. The petition site is served by all public utilities, and it is located in the building safety, fire safety, and Anchorage Road and drainage service areas. The subject of the vacation request is East 50th Avenue. The request is for the full width, the full 60-foot width to be vacated with this plat. The property to the north and the south are in common ownership. Review of the historical plats revealed that typically vacated right-of-way goes in equal shares to property on each side of the center line of a right-of-way that is approved for vacation. In this case, this right-of-way came entirely from the lots to the south. It was not indicated how this right-of-way, if approved for vacation, will be shared by the two petition areas on the north and the south side of the right-of-way. East 50th Avenue has not been constructed to municipal standards. It does only serve a driveway function. There haven't been traffic circulation patterns established for East 50th Avenue. All the lots in the petition area will have both legal and physical access by the existing rights-of-way. Lots further south of this property have access to 51st Avenue, A Street in Cordova, which have been constructed to municipal standards. It does not appear that the vacation of East 50th Avenue will adversely impact either vehicular or pedestrian traffic. The trails plan did not indicate any trail along this right-of-way. With the construction of East 48th Avenue, access to the petition site and surrounding areas should be provided with an adequate traffic circulation pattern. The department and the reviewing agencies stated no objection to the vacation of the East 50th Avenue, provided that East 48th Avenue is constructed with this platting action. It is a peripheral road. It is a collector. It currently provides access to the hospital, and it is needed to be constructed to provide a decent or adequate circulation pattern. There is an R3 zoned property to the north. Previously, the board reviewed a very high density residential development for that property. Staff has been received phone calls from the owners or their representatives of the property to the north that are interested in resubmitting a similar proposal. At that time, the north half of East 48th Avenue would be required to be constructed. That's basically how streets do get constructed within the municipality, is with the development of the property. And that would provide a constructed connection between Cordova and A Street. And it would provide for a more complete circulation pattern. With that said, the department does recommend approval of the request to vacate East 50th Avenue, that recommendation is based on obtaining construction improvements to East 48th Avenue, and the department does recommend approval of the plat for 18 months, subject to conditions 1 through 14 on pages 14 through 17 of the packet. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Bryan. Are there any questions of staff? Ms. Taylor.
Through the chair, on condition number 9 on page 15, the third line references improvements to A Street along the west boundary of Tract C. Should that refer to Tract A?
Madam Chair, Ms. Taylor, thank you. You are correct. Thank you for that correction.
Through the chair, I have another one. On page 17, condition 13I, is that cut off or?
I just want to make the correction.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry. Thank you for your patience. Which is the next one?
The next one is condition 13I.
Yes.
Is that one, it's identical to the beginning of H, and it looks like it might be an editing issue, or if it's not, I would like some explanation.
Madam Chair, Ms. Taylor, I believe you're correct. That doesn't seem to be a complete condition.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So are we going to delete that as a condition, or?
Madam Chair, yes, it's not a complete condition. I think it should be eliminated. Landscaping, as Ms. Taylor noted, is addressed in condition H.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing, and could we hear from the petitioner, or the petitioner's representative, please?
Madam Chair, members of the board, my name is Mark Davis, and I represent Santa Surveys and the petitioners. The primary purpose of this subdivision is the vacation of East 50th Avenue adjacent to our parcels, with the vacated right-of-way being divided equally among the property owners. The 10 lots that fronted on the south side of East 51st are going to be made into 2 parcels fronting onto A Street in Cordova. We feel, as does staff, that we meet the requirements for the vacation. The roadway is not constructed, the right-of-way does not extend through to C Street, and be to the greater good of the municipality to place the land on the tax rolls. While we agree with the staff recommendations for the vacation, we strongly disagree with some of the conditions they would like to see placed on the subdivision. Condition 3, to provide a 5-foot dedication and a 5-foot development setback along the east property boundary adjoining Cordova Street. That might make sense if this is a new development, but it isn't. There are no streets in this area with a 35-foot half-width right-of-way. Having a sliver of a 35-foot right-of-way amongst the 30-foot right-of-way in an area that's basically developed out makes no sense. Condition 5, providing a fire turnaround. We believe that this met with the existing turnaround constructed in 2003. We would ask that the wording be changed to resolve the need for providing a fire turnaround with fire plan review. Condition 7, the 10-foot wide buffer landscape easement along the north boundary of tracks A and C. We would like this to be evenly split with 5-foot along tracks A, B1, and C, which would still maintain a 10-foot buffer, but would place 5 foot either side of the property line. Condition 9, we want to go away in its entirety. East 48th Avenue is adjacent to this subdivision, but is not part of any planned improvements, nor is it part of this subdivision process. As to constructing a turnaround to municipal standards on A Street, I believe that we'll be covering that with Condition 5 of the fire truck turnaround. I'm going to hope that the fire truck can turn around there, and the few people that wander down the dead end should be able to. We agree with staff that the roadway should be developed with the development of the property, but we are making no changes to the property at all. There's no development that's going to happen. Conditions 11 and 12 are also excessive. They would be handled by the permitting and plan review process should this property be developed in the future. Conditions 13, C through I, the plat notes, deal with matters that are best left to permitting and the plan review also. G states that landscaping shall be installed with the development or redevelopment of the property, which is not happening at this point. And H refers to buffer landscaping being installed bordering the north sides of tracks A and C. The remainder of track B is Class C wetlands, along with the majority of tracks A and C. We are proposing no changes in these existing uses. In any development of these parcels will require plan review by the municipality. Thank you, and I'd like to reserve my remaining time for rebuttal.
You have 7 minutes.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to testify in case S11829-1? If so, please come forward and state your name, and if it's difficult, spell it.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. My name is Shamadeva Dandapani. I reside at 301 Igavig Drive.
Could you spell your last name, please?
Last name is spelled D-A-N-D-A-P-A-N-I. I reside at 301 Igavig Drive, which is on the corner of Igavig and Cordova Street. So I have a first-hand, this is my neighborhood. And so when I hear things that they want to do in the neighborhood, I'm interested. And in this case, when I'm special interest, I'd like to bring forward this photograph to you that was taken today by...
We'll have to keep it if that's okay. It becomes a part of the record.
I've just given you a photograph that was taken by Darrell Peterson of D&M Photo today of the traffic congestion problem that exists on Cordova Street as it is today, with the cars parking on the street in front of St. Elias. I've heard that they wish to vacate 50th and they don't have enough parking. They met code, they did everything they were supposed to do, but they're not able to park it. They're actually filling their parking lot, they're filling the long-term Providence across the street, and they're parking on the streets. So there's a dangerous situation there that's in front of the community. That's a mixed use of commercial, industrial, hotels, residential, and apartments, and a very mixed cultural community. I understand the petitioner's request for what they're doing. I understand it. I am a broker, a commercial real estate broker. Some of your Home Depots in this town have been site acquisition by myself in their favor and also for Fred Meyer. So I'm very familiar with the process. What bothers me here is that it seems to be a short-term resolution to a long-term problem. And that is, once you vacate a street, you can't take it back without paying them for it. The city now owns that right away, and I see no reason for the city to give it up at this point in time. The city should consider the fact that you own the property, given the fact that they've talked about increasing taxes and income for the city. That's not the case, because you still don't have the property that was supposed to develop as condos to the north of St. Elias, and you don't have the property developed that is north of Motel 6 on A Street. You don't have A Street developed. You don't have 38 developed to the west from Cordova. We don't have 50th. We do have 51st. But with the mixed uses that we have in there and the parking problems, I would submit that this cannot be allowed because they don't have traffic impact analysis. They don't have the traffic engineer's approval to do this. So I don't see how this can be done without the Platting Board taking into account these very important issues. That you look at the long term and tell me how that's going to circulate if they build the apartments on the vacant land, and if they build another hotel or some high traffic other commercial property on C Street. So I'm definitely in opposition to this, and I would hope that these photographs would show you that we have no sidewalks on Cordova Street. Cordova Street, nor any of those neighborhood streets have been improved in I don't know how many years, but it's been a long, long, long time. So you have dangers. There's nowhere for pedestrians to walk with that situation now.
You need to sum up.
I am summed up.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Panny? Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else wishing to testify?
Yes, hello, my name is John Haxby. I'm with Tiger Trust. We're one of the property owners who would be affected by this subdivision and right-of-way abandonment application. We agree with the application and wish to have the right-of-way abandoned for the following reasons. It is surplus to the municipality's need and has no value to the municipality. The right-of-way was originally taken to allow subdivision of the land into smaller lots and strictly for the use and enjoyment of any future interior lot property owners. The subdivision will recombine the smaller lots into larger tracts, which will have direct access either onto Cordova Street or onto A Street, and therefore there will be no further interior lots requiring access using that East 50th right-of-way. Trash removal, freight companies, and pedestrian potential use, it was alluded to by transportation planning, currently use East 51st Avenue as interconnectivity. The right-of-way would only serve the adjacent property owners, all of whom support this vacation right-of-way. And the municipal traffic engineer, I believe, also did not have an objection to this. The right-of-way has no value as it is now. It's not used for traffic, and traffic in the area has other means to travel between Cordova Street and A Street, more specifically using East 51st Avenue. The right-of-way is a liability to the city because the occasional four-wheel drive trucks sometimes try to jump the hurdles presently there, four-wheel drive down the right-of-way. If someone becomes hurt, the city could get sued. Also of note is that East 51st Avenue receives little or no maintenance attention. It wouldn't be expected if East 50th Avenue is constructed that it would receive any more attention than East 51st does currently. Lastly, the East 50th Avenue right-of-way does not extend to C Street and could never be extended to C Street because C Street is a limited access roadway. There was a traffic study done by USKH and submitted on this case, as I understand it. Further addressing staff recommendations on page 14 under B3, everything up and down Cordova Street currently has 30 feet on either side of the roadway. There's no reason to add another 5 feet there on an existing road, which is for the most part developed. under B5 and B9, those appear somewhat redundant, yet have different potential meanings. B5 asks for a fire turnaround, which was requested on page 5, item number 6, which was in fact constructed in 2003 under DPW project 03-015, while B9 appears to ask to construct a turnaround to municipal standards, which could be wholly different and potentially similar to a cul-de-sac, of which the stuff is not dedicated. And let's see here, B9, I believe the first sentence regarding construction of a required improvement to A Street for Track C actually comes from the last paragraph of page 10 and is meant to address Track A, which was clarified by staff tonight. The wording morphed into page 10 requirements of curb and gutter to any required improvements.
You need to sum up. Your time is up.
Okay, that'll be it. I just think that imposing East 48th construction on this thing when there's no planned or potential or contemplated improvements to any of the properties would be onerous on the owners and punitive to the owners of the southern tracks A and C. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Haxby? Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else wishing to testify?
My name is David McGuire. I'm the managing partner of St. Elias Hospital. For those of you that may not know it, St. Elias is the only long-term acute care hospital in the state of Alaska. What that means in practicality is that it's the only place that severely injured patients who may require hospitalization for greater than 25 days can go. We're happy to say that the hospital is viable. The census is now between 35 and 40. The unintended consequence of that, in spite of thinking that we had adequate parking, is that we don't have adequate parking. And the gentleman who spoke to that has made us aware of that. We are aware of that. Vacating 50th Street will allow us to use that part of our land and the street to park. And I think that would go a long way toward alleviating the parking problem. I don't think it's viable to consider that Alaska can do without such a facility as St. Elias. The need has been demonstrated. The need was there before. The hospital was there, and now it's there. As to the access on 48th, there is no access to St. Elias from 48th Street. There are concrete barriers that have been there as long as I know. The hospital has two entrances, both of which come off of Cordova. To the hospital is viable, as I said, but certainly has a large debt structure. To consider that paving 48th Street would be part of this would be meaningless to St. Elias. There is no way that it could possibly afford to do such a thing. So I would urge you to consider this motion favorably. I think it will go a great way to alleviating the parking problem that we have. The city is not likely to use this for any reason. It would be an added expense to maintain once in its position. I'd be happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. McGuire? Mr. Fuller.
Mr. McGuire, through the chair, will the 50th Avenue driveway then have a shared easement access, or will that move?
Yes, we would be absolutely happy to have a shared easement. I don't think there's any reason to particularly expand the access from Cordova as it presently is. To the best of my knowledge, and I think I'm accurate on this, the current access is not on the 50th Avenue right away. It's on the land from St. Elias, but that is not an issue with us. We're happy to have a shared access.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. McGuire? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to testify in this case? Case S11829-1, Spruce Heights, Providence Edition. Anyone at all? Then we could hear from the petitioner. Do you have any rebuttal?
Madam Chair, my name is Will Webb. I work for USKH, and we were retained to support this action. And I wanted to specifically address the gentleman that lives on EX Street's concerns about 50th Avenue. And we did do a traffic analysis, albeit a limited one, on this action. And the simple fact of the matter is that since 50th Avenue is not currently constructed, vacating it will have no change on the traffic patterns in the area. And on the other hand, keeping 50th Avenue would not fix anything because the city is very unlikely to build 50th Avenue, and the landowners in the area currently don't need it, so they would also be unlikely to build it. So from a traffic perspective, there's just no benefit to keeping 50th Avenue. To that end, I'd also like to mention that on Condition 9, staff specifically mentioned that roads are usually constructed with development, and in this case, we're not proposing any development, so we feel it would be really excessive to require road construction of any type for the platting action, maybe with building permits or something along those lines, but for a simple platting action, we feel that that's excessive, especially considering the platting action would not generate any new traffic or change traffic patterns to require any kind of new roads. Mr. Davis, do you have anything else to add?
I'm pretty happy to give the rest of my rebuttal time to Mr. Haxby.
There was one other staff comment on B9 that had to do with constructing A Street next to Tract A, adding in curb and gutter. It had morphed in from the language had morphed from adding curb and gutter to their recommendation of any required improvements, and that needs to be addressed and should actually be removed. However, requiring A Street to be constructed to half-street standard and curb and gutter added there is actually a very onerous and probably not a smart idea due to the fact that all the property owners to the south do not have curb and gutter on A Street. And so basically you'd be coming down East 51st Avenue with drainage going to the north down along the ditch along the east side of A Street, and then stopping at a curb and guttered area. It would have no place to drain, as it currently drains now to the north. And the only other real comments have to do with all of the plat notes, B13's C through H, or C through I. We really wouldn't think that these should be plat notes. As you know, laws within the municipality change. They're amended from time to time. And there's no change in the land or building permits that are being contemplated or applied for in this subdivision, and these are all basically issues which would typically be handled through the normal building permit process with the laws in effect at the time of construction. So with that, I'm completed. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions of Mr. Haxby, Mr. Webb, or Mr. Davis? Ms. Taylor.
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Webb, in your traffic analysis, did you look at the parking situation for St. Elias?
No, we did not. That was not one of the considerations of the vacation process, so we did not look at that.
Thank you.
Any other questions of any of these gentlemen? Mr. Fuller.
Yes, Mr. Webb, through the chair. Are you in dispute with the city on these items now? I mean, have you addressed these with them specifically, and have they come back with specific reasons or why they need these extra?
For which conditions?
Well, B9 and 13C through H and 5, B5.
I'm sorry, those must have been
I mean,
questions for you.
I can answer that.
Communication with them, or?
Well, first of all, as you know, when staff makes a recommendation, any time that a plat comes up for a subdivision, the planning department basically says, "Oh boy, we get a road for free," and of course that's what happened in this case. I'm almost certain. I asked about the fire turnaround. Mr. Weaver indicated that he'd send somebody out to have a look at it and remove it. but it doesn't appear that he did. That, in fact, was constructed, I know, because I did do the construction on it and actually paid for it. With respect to East 48th Avenue, they would like to obviously get the road constructed right now, but there's no construction that's being contemplated or no improvements to the property that are being contemplated at this time. The other one, that was for number 9, and I have not spoken with him because I did not see the requirement for East 48th until just recent, or for curb and gutter on A Street until just recently, so I have not talked to him about that one. And the other paragraph was which? B13, item C through I, that we'd like to just have eliminated. You know, I think that everybody just tries to throw the kitchen sink in on these things and get every little detail noted on a piece of paper, but Anchorage Municipal Code seems to handle that pretty well, and it doesn't seem that they missed anything through the building permit process. I would see no reason to go through all of the hassle to stick them on a plat note. The municipality, through the building permit process, has the ability to force construction of roads, construction of water sewer, construction of this improvement, that improvement. They can basically have a free hand. They can do whatever they want. I can't imagine why it would be required under a plat note, especially considering the fact that laws change over time. They get more difficult. They get relaxed. I mean, they go both ways, and at the time of construction, that's the time when you deal with it.
Any other questions of these gentlemen? Thank you for your presentation. With that, we'll close the public hearing, and the matter rests with the board. Are there any questions of staff? Ms. Taylor.
Through the chair, there has been a point made about parking tonight on Cordova, and I'm curious what the current half-street standard for construction on East 48th would look like. Would that have any parking available on the south side?
Through the chair, Mrs. Taylor, my name is Don Kiefer. I'm the private development manager under the Community Development Department. And the existing half-street standard would look something like this. It's not your typical back of curb to back of curb construction. There would only be curb and gutter on the subdividing side of 48th, and then there would be 24 feet width of asphalt paving. This is not full street construction. It's half-street construction to allow for curb and gutter on one side and accommodations for two-way traffic.
Any other questions of staff? Mr. Fuller.
Excuse me. What would be the benefit, or what would be acquired by having them build that road if there isn't any current traffic there now? West 48th, excuse me. Would there be any benefit that isn't already being taken care of currently?
Madam Chair, Mr. Fuller, true, there is no traffic now because it isn't constructed. There has been a statement that there is no construction planned on this property. Well, the construction has already taken place prior to the platting action. This is a time when we obtain the right-of-way improvements. Right-of-way improvement to East 48th Avenue would serve to provide better traffic circulation, hopefully to relieve some of the traffic up and down Cordova, so that traffic can travel to either A Street or Cordova Street. A Street north of 48th Avenue is constructed, Cordova is constructed, and 48th Avenue is a collector, and it does need to be constructed to provide a complete traffic circulation system. It's not a freebie by the municipality when development occurs. Now, in this case, the development has already occurred, but it has generated traffic. This is the time to relieve some of that traffic burden on Cordova by requiring the construction of East 48th along the north property boundary. This is not unusual. This is how streets do get constructed. And now that this property is coming in for plat, the municipality is asking for the construction of East 48th Avenue.
Does this subdivision date back to the point where the property owners can vote to have the city actually do the improvement and then charge it back to the owners over 20 years?
Through the chair, Mr. Fuller, part of these neighborhoods have been constructed to current roadway standards through the road improvement district processes.
Right.
That's why some of them are in place, because prior to then, there was no roadway there either, or something to very substandard conditions. So right now, we've been told by our own legal staff that we could not encumber by any plat note or otherwise somebody to vote in favor of an RID in the future. Leaving this to an RID, there's absolutely no way of telling when this roadway would ever be constructed. In its current state, it's equivalent to a paper plat.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Seeing none, may I have a positive motion on this case, please? Starting with the vacation. Ms. Taylor.
In the matter of case S11829-1, Spruce Heights subdivision, I move for the approval of the request to vacate East 50th Avenue between Cordova and A Streets.
Is there a second? Mr. Young seconds. Would you speak to your motion, please, Ms. Taylor?
I plan to support my motion. I believe that East 50th Avenue is surplus to the municipal needs and will not enhance traffic circulation in the area.
Any other discussion? Is there any objection to the motion? Then we need to vote. Yes vote will support the motion, which is to vacate. A no vote will be a vote for not vacating. So please vote. That motion passes, and the vacation is approved. Moving on to the plat. Ms. Taylor? Ms. Taylor, and
in the same case, I motion for the approval of the plat for 18 months subject to the following conditions listed 1 through 14 on pages 14 through 17 with 3 changes. On condition number 5, I would like to change the text from provide a fire turnaround to resolve the need for a fire turnaround. On condition number 9, I would like to correct the tract C to tract A language in the 3rd line. And on condition 13I, I would like to strike that.
is there a second? Mr. Young seconds. Ms. Taylor, would you speak to your motion?
I plan to support the motion. I believe that construction of East 48th will help circulation at the hospital and will enhance the traffic patterns in the neighborhood. I understand the petitioner's objections to being required to construct something when there doesn't appear to be anything happening on site, but I would counter that the construction should have happened when the construction did happen on site with St. Elias Hospital. So I don't see that as too onerous for this platting action to require construction now. And I will be supporting my motion.
Any other discussion? Any opposition? Seeing none, the motion passes and the plat is approved for 18 months, subject to the amended conditions. Next case is case S11835-1, Lusac Manor subdivision. May we have the staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request to subdivide 2 lots totaling 6.85 acres into 1 lot with vacations of Heinzelman Drive, a 20-foot by 100-foot sewer easement, and 2 building setback lines. These properties are located between A Street and C Street, immediately south of 20th Avenue. The properties are zoned R2M, multiple family residential district. The properties were until recently developed as multifamily dwelling units. The purpose of this plat is a reversion to acreage. The easements being vacated are no longer necessary, and upon redevelopment, new easements will be dedicated. The street, Heinzelman Drive, is an internal road, and necessary access will be addressed during development subject to state and municipal standards. While this plat is relatively simple, I believe it is the unique nature of this redevelopment deserves some background, which I'd like to address now. The Alaska Housing Finance Corporation initiated this platting action and demolition of Lusac Manor while undergoing a competitive process to redevelop the site. In doing this, the purpose was to give the eventual winner a head start on redevelopment. In November, Alaska Housing awarded the rights for redevelopment to Cook Inlet Housing Authority. Cook Inlet is currently working on designs and plans to begin construction in the early spring of 2011. The development will be 120 townhome units and a community center owned by Cook Inlet. Bell & Associates is here this evening to represent the petitioner. Since Cook Inlet is the future developer of the site and responsible for meeting all conditions of this plat, representatives from their development team are here to offer testimony and answer questions. The initial platting action assumed little about the future development and as such contained some conditions that reflected unknown development. As a result of coordination between the petitioner's representatives and planning staff, we would like to recommend approval of this plat for 18 months, subject to the revised list of conditions that should be in front of you right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing, and could we hear from the petitioner, please, or the petitioner's representative?
Hello, my name is Chris Burt. I'm with FR Bell & Associates, representing the petitioner for this plat. First off, he kind of explained it. If you look on sheet 12 of the staff packet, there's a good little map kind of summarizes what we're doing there. Horseshoe-shaped right-of-way going through the middle of the lot. There's currently now 2 lots, one on the inside of the horseshoe, one on the outside. We're just basically vacating that right-of-way, turning it into one big lot. We agree with the majority of the conditions that staff offered. The one thing that we would like to do is withdraw our request for vacating the 20-foot building setbacks along A and C Street. That was one of those items that was done without anticipation of what the final development of the site would be. It's been since determined that there's going to be no kind of rezoning taking place. So the existing R2M zoning already provides for the 20-foot development setback, so we don't need to have that that portion of the plat approved at this time. The only other item really that we'd like to address is number 7, the request for the 10-foot wide landscape buffer easement. And for that part of it, I'd like to hand it over to Tomas Deek of KPB Architects, because he has a lot more hands-on knowledge of what they're going to be doing for the final part of this project.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening. Just briefly for the intro, my name is Tamás Deák. I'm a principal at KPB Architects and the project manager for the development team for Cook Inlet. We are here today to report on the progress of the project, which you heard from Chris. We have been working with staff, and the resulting condition changes are really due to that coordination effort. The one item which I would like to address is item 7, which is a requirement on this plat to include an easement for buffer landscaping quoting 21 AD 340, which allows the Platting Board the authority at their choosing to mitigate impacts of incompatible uses of development along adjacent properties. In this case, the indication from planning staff was that the incompatibility comes from having 2 arterials adjacent to the residential use. I would like to emphasize that the residential use has been in existence since the road have been in existence. They've been living together for about 35 to 40 years when HFC first developed this project. The buffer landscaping really in this case could do only one thing, which is visual, mitigation of the traffic as it goes by. I will hand you a drawing real quickly. I think I'll do it for everyone, and I hope I have the time. And this drawing is showing you basically a plot I made, which is a record of the existing conditions prior to demolition and the current plat overlaid with the topography and our layout for the new set of buildings. What I would like to call your attention to, and I know there is no title blocks and north arrows and such, so I help you out on that. West 20th is the north side of the parcel, so if you see West 20th on the top, you're looking at the right way at this drawing. A Street is along the east side, and the C Street is along west side. The buffer landscaping easement request for this condition number 7 is along those 2 parcel properties. What you see there is a requirement which would place all the required buffer landscaping on the property as it's required by code, and way outside of the existing slope which are built there, creating about a 25 to 30 feet elevation difference between A and C Street and the parcel itself. So in terms of visual mitigation of any kind of issue, you're not going to get too much benefit because you're going to plant these plants 30 feet below road grade on the south side of parcel and about 10 to 15 on the north side of the parcel. The other issue that I like to emphasize here is the existence of existing and future easements along both of those property lines. One of the sides, which is the west side along C Street, has an existing major sewer drain going towards Chester Creek, and that is a 48-inch concrete culvert, which is right in the same location where this easement would go. Also, there is electrical easement on both sides, and will be required as we go through the planning process, I'm sure. That causes major incompatible uses for landscaping, which in my view and in the development team's view will do no real benefit for the purpose which it was intended. So our request is a very simple one. We'd like to eliminate this condition because it doesn't serve the intended purpose at this site, and we are strong believers of site-specific design for every site, and at this location we believe that the condition 20, which addresses the 21 AD 340 requirement simply doesn't apply. It's just not site-specific enough, so I would request that it should be removed. And I think with that, if you have any questions, we will entertain those, and that would be our presentation. We'll reserve our time for rebuttal.
You have 4 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Diak or Mr. Burke? Ms. Taylor.
Mr. Diak, what exactly is required to be installed under buffer landscaping easement? Is that fences, trees, shrubs?
Buffer landscaping is actually a very prescriptive requirement of the landscaping portion of the subdivision part of the code, and it requires that you have a maximum or a minimum 50% evergreen and 50% deciduous tree planting in a 10-foot wide easement, 10 foot on center. So it's not like that really doesn't take much creativity to meet that requirement, because that's all you can do. Now, in terms of what it does for the project, our concern is that we don't, I'm a landscape architect. It's not like I don't like the trees. I like them in the right place. And in this case, they simply are not in the right place and diminish the ability for us to build the trail, which we plan to do in this project on the west side of the project where it currently doesn't exist. They would overlap, and we couldn't build a trail because we can't build it on DOT property, which is the road right-of-way. But to answer the question, it's a prescriptive requirement for tree plantings.
Any other question for Mr. Burke, Mr. Diak? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to testify in case S11835-1, Lusac Manor? Anyone at all? Do you wish to use any more of your rebuttal time?
Just a brief moment. I guess if we look on page 14 of the staff packet, there's an aerial photo there, and you can kind of see the tree line along the A&C Street. It's a little zoomed out because the site's quite large, but it's not like there won't be landscaping. There's already existing landscaping that's been there, and been, like you said, the site's over 30 years old, over 35 years old, I believe. So all those trees are well established on the slopes, and they're kind of providing the landscaping already. Just without having to put specific trees at specific intervals where it might interfere with some of that existing growth, which you'd like to keep in place. That's all.
Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing. And are there any questions of staff? Mr. Young.
Through the chair, with the testimony that we heard about the landscape buffer, what's the perception from staff that this would actually, by requiring this, would be a benefit to this development?
Through the chair, Anchorage Municipal Code, Title 21, Chapter 80, Section 340, allows the platting authority to require buffer landscaping or screening landscaping. In this particular case, buffer landscaping is the minimum. Screening landscaping is a much more, it's a much larger requirement, and we think that it is appropriate on this development. And well, actually, we ask that the Platting Board decide on this. So the petitioner makes very good points. The slope does play a factor in this. It does mitigate some of it does actually have very good points, but the staff believes that the minimum buffer landscaping is believes that buffer landscaping should be required. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Mr. Fuller?
Yes, I was unclear. Now, did you say that that we have option of two different ways? One is buffer landscaping and there's another different landscaping?
Through the chair, yes, that section of code allows for buffer landscaping or screening landscaping. Screening landscaping is a larger requirement. Buffer landscaping is the minimum. That's why we ask for buffer landscaping there.
So we're not removing the screening, it's just which one we require.
That section of code allows for buffer landscaping or screening. In this particular case, staff asked that buffer landscaping be installed.
And the petitioner wants?
I believe the petitioner wants that condition removed entirely.
Oh, well, that was my question. Do we have the option to remove it or just change to the less demanding?
Well, the Platting Authority has the option to require buffer or screening. It is a recommendation of staff that buffer landscaping be installed.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Mr. Young? No? I have a question. Could you give us what the citation and code is for that, for requiring buffering or screening landscaping?
Would you like me to read that section?
No, just tell me what.
Okay. It's 2180-340.
May require. So it's not a shall require, it's a may require.
Through the chair, no, ma'am, it is in fact a may require.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to clarify that. All right, if there aren't any more questions, could I have a positive motion in the case, please? Ms. Taylor, is there? Sorry.
In the matter of case S11835, Lusac Manor subdivision, I motion for the approval of the vacation of Heinzelman Drive and a 20-foot by 100-foot plus or minus sewer easement.
Mr. Fuller seconds. Would you speak to your motion, please?
With the demolition of the previous development, I believe Heinzelman Drive and the sewer easement are no longer needed.
Any other discussion? Any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the vacation is approved. The next vacation has been withdrawn by the petitioner for the two 20-foot building setback lines, and so we move on to the plat. May I have a positive motion on the plat? Ms. Taylor?
In the same case, I move for the approval of the plat for 18 months, subject to the conditions 1 through 8 on the revised department recommendations, F1B, that we got on pages 1 through 3, with the exception of condition number 7. I would like to delete condition number 7 in its entirety. Shall I speak to it now?
We'll have to wait for a second.
Okay.
Is there a second? Ms. Moses seconds. Now you may speak.
Okay. I support the development, and I do not support the buffer landscaping easement because I think it is excess to our needs, and I think the development would be better served by the proposed pathway in that location. And I don't think it would be the best use of the petitioner's resources.
Any other discussion? Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the plat is approved for 18 months with the amended conditions. Next case is case S11839-1 O'Malley Square subdivision. May we have staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a subdivision of 6 lots and 1 deed parcel into 2 lots with vacation requests for both Gamble Street and East 112th Avenue, along with variance for lot frontage onto a public street and dedication of right-of-way. The property is located south of 112th Avenue, west of the Old Seward Highway, and north of Center Street, with the Alaska Railroad right-of-way on the west property boundary. The Platting Board has seen several iterations, several designs of this property in the past. They have reviewed and approved a number of designs as well as vacation requests. However, those prior cases have either expired or were withdrawn with the submittal of this revised drawing. There is a lengthy property history on pages 6 and 7 of the packet. But suffice it to say that this is the most current and only design that is still viable. The petition site is governed by 2 zoning districts, I-1 and B3, General Business District. I-1 is Light Industrial District. Now, the zoning district boundary runs down the center line of South Gamble Street, which is the subject of a vacation request with this particular plat. The proposed common lot boundary, though, does not run down the center line of Gamble Street, therefore creating a split lot zoning. It is recommended that the boundary between lots 1 and 2 do follow the zoning district boundary to eliminate split zoned lots and to show the zoning district boundary on the plat. The property to the north is developed with a Lowe's store. It's north of East 112th Avenue, which is constructed to municipal standards, and surrounding property is zoned, that is zone B3, is across the Old Seward Highway, is developed with commercial uses. To the south, the I-1 zoned property south of Center Street is developed with a mix of some residential uses. This is an old subdivision, but primarily light industrial uses. The property is served by sewer main lines that are located within 112th Avenue, as well as Gamble Street. AWW water lines are located in 112th and Gamble Street as well. Provision of public water and sanitary sewer for development of proposed Lot 2, which is on the north side of Center Street, will require a private system review through the AWW field offices. The petition site is not currently served with storm drain facilities. The Old Seward Highway is designated Class 3 major arterial on the official streets and highways plan. It is a state-owned and maintained street. Center Street Center Street and South Gamble Street are not designated on the official streets and highways plan, and they function as local streets under the municipal jurisdiction. Access to the petition lots will be via the Old Seward Highway, via Center Street and South Gamble Street. It's unlikely that direct vehicular access would be allowed to the Old Seward Highway from this petition property. In the past, the state of Alaska did acquire a portion of this property to construct an acceleration lane that serves basically traffic exiting the Lowe's store, and access to Old Seward Highway would actually be located within that acceleration lane. So if access is requested or desired by the petitioner to the Old Seward Highway, it would come under the permitting jurisdiction of the State of Alaska Department of Transportation. The preliminary plat does show a proposed 60-foot private access easement in lieu of the South Gamble Street, if the South Gamble Street is vacated with this action. And access from East 112th Avenue to this site is not feasible, as there is a 12 to 14-foot difference in elevation between constructed 112th Avenue and the petition site. It's not feasible because of the steep, sharp change in grade. Drainage is a problem on this particular property. It formerly was used as a greenhouse, tree forest area, a tree farm. There is a low spot on Lot 2, proposed Lot 2, that is now currently serving as a retention pond for the site. And the petitioner has stated in the past that this pond would be filled and that a drainage lift station would be constructed directing water to a pipe system in the Old Seward Highway. The pipe system in the Old Seward Highway is on the west side, on the east side of the Old Seward Highway, not the east side adjoining this property. Currently, the drainage does flow northerly, northwesterly toward the Alaska Railroad right-of-way. So drainage is a problem, and that affects this property or development of this property. Private development is asking for a hydrology analysis as well as a grading plan and erosion and sediment control plan. The vacation request does include eliminating 30 by 290 feet plus minus of the south half of East 112th Avenue and 60 by 404 feet of South Gamble Street. East 112th Avenue is constructed to municipal standards. There is already a 73-foot wide right-of-way dedication for 112th that was provided with the platting and for the Lowe's property, and it was constructed with the development of the Lowe's store. As mentioned previously, there is a significant grade change, and the south 30 feet of the dedicated south West 112th Avenue is not, that is the subject of this vacation request, is not constructed to municipal standards. And access from 112th Street isn't feasible due to the grade change. The request to vacate a portion of South Gamble Street would affect only the two proposed lots. There will be a stub portion of the Gamble Street right-of-way that will remain adjacent to Lot 5 on the east side of South Gamble and Lot 6 on the west side of South Gamble. The private development is asking for improvement to Center Street and South Gamble Street and the private access easement to strip pave standards. It has to meet the fire requirements to support an 80,000-pound emergency response vehicle. Traffic engineering stated no objection to the vacation request. However, they do want to turn around at the northern end of the vacated right-of-way, which would become a private access easement. It does appear that these two rights-of-way are access to municipal standards for vacation of right-of-way, as well as a municipal vacation policy. They do appear to both to be access to municipal need for right-of-way. The reviewing agencies had no objection, and the department does recommend approval based on the non-objection of the reviewing agencies. There is also a request for lot frontage and for dedication of streets. The standards were reviewed on page 12, and it appears that the standards are met. There are special conditions. the grade change for one, and the fact that 112th Avenue is fully constructed and will not dedication of right-of-way for 112th or vacating the right-of-way for 112th and vacating the right-of-way for South Gamble Street will not adversely affect traffic circulation or access to other properties. The existing water and sewer mains located within the South Gamble Street currently right-of-way, which will be a private access easement if approved, will be protected by adequate easements to protect AWWU's interest in that facility, as well as allow them legal access to maintain the facility. Therefore, on page 13, the department does recommend approval of vacating the south half of East 112th Avenue, vacating a portion of South Gamble Street, approval of both the variances from AMC 2180-010 and 2183-30, as well as approval of the plat for 18 months, subject to the conditions on pages 13 and 14 of the packet. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any questions of staff? I have a question about the vacation of South Gamble Street alongside of Lot 5. Why does that little corner not belong to Lot 5? If, when you vacate a street and half of it goes to one side and half of it goes to the property on the other side, it seems like there's a little square there that belongs to Lot 5.
Madam Chair, there was a court action, and on page 11, Mr. Molika owns Lot 5, Block 1, Turnigan.
Mm-hmm.
There was a court action, and the Superior Court case, it's in the 4th paragraph down. The Superior Court case mandates that plaintiff, who is Mr. Molika, agrees to transfer to defendants, which is the current petitioner, any and all interest he acquires in the area currently referred to as the Gamble Street right-of-way.
Okay.
So the Gamble Street, the South Gamble Street right-of-way, that portion adjoining Mr. Molika's property by court order is to be, Mr. Molika will have to sign the final plat, but by court order that will revert to the petitioner.
Okay.
And the lot across from Mr. Molika's on the west side of South Gamble Street, that used to be part of the petition site. The petitioner did sell that lot. It is a different owner, and it is a subject of the last case. It isn't part of the plat, the last case on the agenda. So that portion of South Gamble Street could not be vacated. We could not vacate the balance of the right-of-way adjoining Mr. Molika's property because we could not leave a substandard right-of-way. So that's why it terminates, the vacation request terminates where it does. And there is a remaining dedicated right-of-way adjoining a portion of Mr. Molika's property and a portion of the lot on the west side of South Gamble.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll open the public hearing, and could we hear from the petitioner or the petitioner's representative, please? This happens from time to time. And it's up to the board whether we want to continue without the petitioner. If the board feels that they have enough information and can continue with the case without the petitioner, then we can continue. If you want to hear from the petitioner, we can postpone it. Yeah, discussion.
Well, they've already done all the homework. We were here last time when they were here.
Is there any other discussion? Anyone feel that we need to postpone?
I'm concerned that one of the conditions requires an amendment to the lot boundaries. I think that's a significant change that may be incompatible with the use that's already constructed on the lot. And I'm curious, if we move forward with a requirement that they amend a lot line, does that make this plat action meaningless for them, prohibit them from coming back? How does this affect them?
Ms. O'Brien, do you have any input on this?
Madam Chair, board members, Lot 1 is the only one that is the only lot that is actually developed with a storage office use with associated parking. I noticed that the boundary for the developed lot, most of the vacated area is being incorporated. It's sort of like divided half and half. The south half of the vacation is being incorporated into Lot 2, which is currently not developed. The north half of let's call it the vacated South Gamble Street right-of-way, is being incorporated into Lot 1. Ms. Taylor's point is well taken. I don't know if relocating that line to the center line would result in any encroachments into required yards. The only alternative to the, without knowing that answer to that for sure, is the item number 3, Madam Chair, Ms. Taylor, is the one that you were concerned about, to eliminate the split lot zoning, amending the lot boundaries, is to change that condition as resolving the need with the planning department to amend the lot boundaries to eliminate the split lot zoning. In that respect, if there is a problem that would be encountered by the property owner, then that placing the condition on the preliminary plat approval would provide some flexibility to allow the applicant to maintain his proposed design as submitted.
Mr. Young?
I have a question of staff. Since there are some significant drainage issues related to this property, and one of the proposed solution was a lift station for the stormwater runoff, is the petitioner aware of the cost and willing to pay that kind of cost to solve this problem?
Madam Chair, Mr. Taylor,
Mr. Young.
This design and that issue has existed since they first brought this case forward in 2005, and that was actually the petitioner's suggestion. The only other thing I can think of is if there are significant questions that the board would like to ask the petitioners, particularly those who may not have been here when this case came forward 3 times, that might be something to consider in deciding whether to proceed or to postpone it.
Any other questions? Mr. Fuller?
Well, for staff, is the petitioner the owner of both Lots 1 and Lot 2?
Madam, that's wrong. Madam Chair, Mr. Fuller, yes, it's in common ownership.
Any other discussion? Any other questions? Mr. Young?
Madam Chair, I would prefer to postpone this matter until the petitioner can be present and can be represented.
Okay. Okay, then we need a motion to that effect. Mr. Young moves. Is there a second to postpone this case? Ms. Moses seconds. Mr. Young?
Yes, I'm going to support this motion, and I believe that the petitioner should be present and should be able to have representation. And since I haven't been involved in hearing this case before, I have some serious concerns about this property that won't get answered without having a representative here.
Any other discussion? Any objection to the motion? Ms. Taylor?
I object to the motion to participate. My concern was just the strict condition 3 about lot lines, and I think that's been addressed with proposed changes to the language. I feel that the petitioner has had an extra month since this was postponed from December 1st to discuss with staff any concerns they may have had about these conditions, and they always have the option of appealing if they don't like what we do tonight. But if we delay, we're also impacting the petitioner by postponing their ability to move forward on this project. So I would prefer that we move forward with this tonight.
Okay, since there's an objection, then we will vote on it. And the motion is to postpone. A yes vote will postpone it until we can talk to the petitioner, and no vote will leave us free to move forward. Okay, that motion does not pass, so we'll move forward. And could I have a motion on, a positive motion on the vacation requests? If we could probably take the vacations together. Ms. Taylor.
In the matter of case S11839-1 O'Malley Square subdivision, I motion for the approval of the request to vacate both the south half of East 112th Avenue and South Gamble Street.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Fuller. Speak to your motion.
I think these vacations are logical based on the proposed development before us.
Any other discussion? Any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the vacations are approved. Moving on to the variances. Ms. Taylor? In
the same case, I motion for the approval of the variances from AMC 2080-0 010 and AMC 2180-330.
Is there a second? Ms. Moses seconds. Would you speak to your motion?
I support the variances because I think it makes sense with this development.
Any other discussion? Any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the variances are approved. Moving on to the plat.
In the same case, I motion for the approval of the plat for 18 months, subject to conditions 1 through 9 on pages 13, 14, and 15, with the editing of the text on condition D3 to read, resolve the need to amend the lot boundaries to eliminate the split lot zoning.
Is there a second? Could you?
Sorry.
There we go. Now.
Sorry.
Ms. Moses seconds. Is there any other discussion? Is there any objection to the motion? Did you discuss your motion?
Oh, in speaking to the motion, I intend to support my motion. I think this is a very challenging property, and I know the property owner has been working with staff for many years to try and come up with a viable solution. So to see them step forward with a lift station solution to the drainage is significant, I think. And I believe we have some conditions that will cover all of the municipality's concerns.
Now, is there any other discussion? Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the plat is approved for 18 months with the conditions as amended. There's going to be a problem with the last one, too, isn't it? Should we take a break? Okay. Request for a break. We'll take a 15-minute break. Okay. I'll take a 10-minute break. Okay, we're back and moving on to case S11841-1, Brewington subdivision. Is that right? Yeah. Could we have staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request to subdivide approximately 20 acres of existing Tract A, Brewington subdivision, into 2 tracts with a variance from Anchorage Municipal Code 2180-300G to create a flagpole where the pole portion exceeds the maximum 200 feet in a suburban district. The resulting subdivision would create 2 tracts, Brewington subdivision Tract A1 and A2. If I may make a correction, the plat before you shows the 2 tracts as A2. The flagpole tract is A2, and the other tract is A1. So I just want to make that clear. This property is located in Eklutna at the east end of Eklutna Lake Road. Proposed tract A2 is developed with a single-family residence and detached garage. Proposed tract A1 is undeveloped. The property is zoned R10, Residential Alpine Slope District, and is subject to special limitations. The special limitations on this property require a minimum lot size of 87,120 square feet. As was stated previously, the variance in this case is to create a flagpole on tract A2 where the pole portion exceeds 200 feet for a total length of 895 feet. Anchorage Municipal Code requires that 4 standards be met for this variance to be approved. Staff finds that all 4 standards are met with the explanation of each on page 6 of your staff packet. Because staff finds that all standards are met, we recommend approval of this plat and variance for 18 months subject to conditions and plat notes listed on pages 7 and 8 of your staff packet. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing, and could we hear from the petitioner or the petitioner's representative?
Madam Chairman, board members, my name is Kenneth Lang. I'm here this evening in behalf of the petitioners, Donald and Cynthia Burrington. I'd like to start with a brief history of the property. This is the Burrington homestead, and it was originally 80 acres. And in 1992, Gilbert and Dorothy Burrington subdivided it into 4 tracts, which they gave to their 4 children. Donald Burrington received Tract A, and tonight before you we're reviewing the subdivision of Tract A into 2 10-acre parcels, which will allow Mr. Burrington to give Tract A2 to his son. The staff considers Tract A2 to be a flag lot. We disagree, but since the staff is supporting the variance, we won't argue the case. We're in approval with the 10 staff recommendations, and would ask that you approve the plat subject to the conditions. And I would be happy to answer any questions and would reserve the balance of my time for rebuttal if needed.
8.5 minutes. Are there any questions for Mr. Lang? Ms. Taylor.
Thank you. Through the chair, condition number 7 requires you to resolve with ADOT and PF the apparent right-of-way discrepancies. Have you had any contact with DOT yet?
No, I haven't. Okay. But the problem with DOT is, well, we haven't done any surveying there yet. We're relying on the previous plat. DOT has done some survey work which has not been recorded, which they claim changes the right-of-way slightly. But we can resolve that with them.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Lang? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify in case S1184-1, Burrington subdivision? Anyone at all? Mr. Lang, do you care to use any of your 8.5 minutes?
No.
Okay, thank you. So we'll close the public hearing and the matter rests with the board. Any questions of staff? Okay. Could we have a positive motion, please, in this case, starting with the variance? Mr. Story.
Through the chair, in the matter of case S-11841-1, Burlington subdivision, I move for approval of the variance.
AMC 2180-300G.
Yes.
And Mr. Fuller seconds. Would you speak to your motion, please?
It appears that the standards are met, and I agree with the department's review and recommendations.
Any other discussion? Any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes, and the variance is approved. Moving on to the plat. Mr. Story.
In the same case, S-11841-1, I move for approval of the plat for 18 months, subject to conditions 1 through 10.
And Mr. Fuller seconds. Would you speak to your motion, please?
This appears to be a straightforward plat, and I agree, again, with the department's review and recommendations.
Any other discussion? Any opposition? Seeing none, the motion passes and the plat is approved. for 18 months with conditions in the packet. Okay, last case. Case S11838-1, first addition to Turnigan Number 2 subdivision. Could we have staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request to subdivide 2 lots into 2 different lots with a request to vacate the 50-foot by 236-foot plus minus portion of Center Street right-of-way for proposed lots 5A and 6A, Turnigan subdivision, addition number 2. It contains 1.63 acres. Existing lot 6, block 3, is located on the north side of Center Street. It is vacant. There is an application to construct a storage unit that has been submitted to Building Safety. Existing Lot 5 is located on the south side of Center Street. It's developed with a single-family structure as well as an auto service garage. Let's see. The property is zoned I-1, Light Industrial District. Review of the I-1 district regulations, the replat of the property, the resulting lots will meet the I-1 standards in terms of dimension, lot area, lot width, and it meets the subdivision regulations as well. They meet the subdivision regulations as well. Center Street is not designated on the official streets and highways plan. It does function as a local street, local roadway. The properties are served by sanitary sewer that's located in Center Street right-of-way. Let's see, and it's available to both lots 5 and 6. AWWU Water is located in Center Street, extending from East 112th Avenue, and it's available to existing Lot 6. Lot 6 is to be served by both public water and sanitary sewer. Existing Lot 5 is currently served by on-site utilities. On-site services has requested documentation that the existing on-site utilities meet with the approval of the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation, which has jurisdiction over these on-site utilities. As mentioned in the earlier case, drainage does generally run northwesterly, westerly toward the Alaska Railroad right-of-way. Private development requires an alternate easement for drainage within the vacated Center Street right-of-way if it is approved for vacation. The vacation request is fairly straightforward. It is the western end of Center Street, adjoining the boundaries of both the proposed both lots. It is the western 236 feet. It is a dead-end street. It ends at the Alaska Railroad right-of-way. There is not a level crossing at this location to cross the railroad, nor is there dedicated right-of-way on the western side of the railroad for which Center Street extended could connect with. Given that, it appears that this portion of Center Street is access to municipal need for right-of-way. Traffic engineering stated no objection to the vacation request. Private development had no objection to vacation of Center Street. And access to adjoining property is provided by dedicated streets. The department does recommend approval of the request to vacate a portion of Center Street and recommends approval of the plat for 18 months, subject to conditions 1 through 8 on pages 8 through 10 of the packet. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bryan. Are there any questions of staff? Ms. Taylor?
Thank you. Through the chair, I have two concerns. And the first is, why is this development not being tasked with participation in the Gamble Street, Center Street improvements that we saw from the adjacent development?
The property to the south is they weren't asked to participate because they have always been the responsibility for been required of the plat that was previously heard. Private development did not ask for any improvements to these streets, being the responsibility of O'Malley Square subdivision. The access to these streets will not change. The vacation of this portion of Center Street, which isn't constructed, will not change, and they have access from Center Street. Lot 5 will have access from Center Street. They can come from the south. They don't necessarily have to come from Center Street, the property on the south. So with the improvements required of the previous case, they weren't required with this.
Thank you. My other concern is the Alaska Railroad right-of-way easement on the western boundary of these lots. On the large plat that's in front of us, it shows the continuous easement, which would seem to indicate that there was a railroad easement over the Center Street right-of-way. I am not familiar with railroad easements on top of city right-of-ways. Is that something that the railroad has commented on?
Through the chair, Ms. Taylor, the railroad did not comment on this particular plat.
Does staff feel it would be an onerous burden to ask the petitioner to resolve with the railroad the need to dedicate an easement to make sure that we're not putting a 50-foot gap in what they presume they would have access to?
Madam Chair, Ms. Taylor, that railroad right-of-way easement will continue to exist.
It would exist on the private property that it was dedicated to, but when that easement was dedicated, I'm not sure that that easement would have been dedicated on city right-of-way, because the railroad would have had no need to dedicate an easement on top of what's already a public right-of-way. May not have had a need.
The easement was acquired by Book and Page. It wasn't dedicated with a particular plat, and on page 43 is a copy of the railroad easement, and it's the west 17 feet of lot 6, 7, 8, and 9, and 10, block 3. And the property owner's right to use said easement in any way or for any purpose. There isn't a plat that accompanies that railroad easement. but there is on page 46 a copy of the, of a document that was attached to a Chugach Electric easement, and you're quite correct, they show the easement on Lot 6 and Lot 5, but I don't see the easement extending through that Center Street right-of-way. So it may be worthwhile to add a condition to resolve the need to dedicate a 17-foot wide railroad easement, railroad right-of-way easement along the west boundary at the point where it adjoins the railroad right-of-way, so that there is a continuous easement if the Center Street is approved for vacation.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. And could we hear from the petitioner or the petitioner's representative?
Good evening. I'm Chris Hubble with AC Investments, and I'm just here to answer questions if there is any. I don't have anything to add for anyone.
Any questions for the petitioner? Seeing none, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in case S11838-1? Seeing none, do you care to add anything at this point? You have 9 and 3/4 minutes.
Some minutes left. On page 9, number 4, is that standard to write those on there or to include those?
That would be a question for Ms. O'Brien.
Madam Chair, Mr. Hubble, it is becoming standard. That is growing out of the municipality it's basically being required by the municipal law department based on experience in other situations whereby the if there's any contamination, it's the responsibility of the property owner, not the municipality. That was required by private development. So that is now becoming a condition that is being placed on plats, and recent plats have been required to execute that prior to recording a final plat. In fact, I had 2 at the end of the year that had that kind of agreement that had to be executed with the municipality and recorded with the final plat.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. With that, we'll close the public hearing, and the matter rests with the board. Are there any questions of staff? Seeing none, could I have a positive motion? Starting with the vacation. Ms. Taylor?
The matter of case S11838, Turnigan Subdivision Number 2. I motion for the approval of the request to vacate a 50 by 236-foot portion of Center Street adjoining lots 5 and 6, Block 3, Turnigan Subdivision Number 2.
And There we go. And Mr. Young seconds. Would you speak to your motion, please? Ms. Taylor?
Based on the information in front of us, I agree with the department's recommendations.
Any other discussion? Any objection? Oh, discussion. Sorry. Mr. Story.
Through the chair, Anna, would that adding the easement or the requirement to discuss the easement with the Alaska Railroad be put in the vacation of the right-of-way rather than the plat? Since if the plat is approved or the vacation is approved, then they already have approval of vacating the right-of-way without acquiring that easement. So I guess it could go in either, but it seems that it would go in the vacation of the right-of-way rather than in the plat as a condition of the vacation of the right-of-way.
I was planning to put it in the plat just to follow with the form that we had earlier in the Lusac Manor, where there are conditions that I would not have approved the vacation if I didn't have the conditions under the plat. So I'm just following form, but I'm certainly open to...
I'm just making a suggestion. To me, if you approve the vacation of the right-of-way, it already approves the right-of-way without the condition of the easement within that right-of-way. But if it's part of the condition of the vacation of the right-of-way, then it would stay with the right-of-way rather than the plat. I guess it could go in either one. Just a comment, not really a suggestion.
Madam Chair, Mr. Story, Ms. Taylor, the vacation is approved, but the vacation does not become actual until the final plat is recorded. So, point well taken, but it will be enforced if it is applied to the preliminary plat, because that would be a condition that would have to be resolved with a preliminary plat, which would then allow the plat to be recorded showing the vacated right-of-way and the connection of the easement in the boundaries of the vacated right-of-way. Either way, it will be enforced.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Any other discussion? Any opposition to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the vacation is approved. Moving on to the plat. Ms. Taylor?
In the matter of case S11838, Turnigan Subdivision Number 2, I motion for the approval of the plat for 18 months, subject to conditions 1 through 7 on pages 8, 9, and 10. I would like to add condition 8, resolve with the Alaska Railroad the need to dedicate continuous easement along the western boundary of the proposed lots.
Would this be number 9?
I thought notes always had to go last. I don't care.
Oh, then you're going to renumber.
Yeah, and then renumbering number 9.
Oh, okay, sorry.
If notes don't have to go last, I'm not picky on the numbers. I just thought they had to go last.
Okay, would you repeat your number 8, please?
Condition number 8, resolve with the Alaska Railroad the need to dedicate continuous easement along the western boundary of the proposed lot.
And then renumbering up number 9.
And renumber condition 8 to read condition number 9.
Is there a second? Mr. Young seconds. Would you speak to your motion?
Based on the information before us, I believe these conditions satisfy my concerns, and I agree with the department's recommendation to approve the plat.
Any other discussion? Any opposition to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes. The plat is approved for 18 months, subject to the condition, the amended conditions. Which brings us to the end of the public hearing portion. Having received no appearance requests, Any, don't see any reports. Any board member comments? Welcome to our new members. You're welcome. Motion for adjournment. Mr. Young, we are adjourned.